Alright, welcome to the first episode of the Pat and Will Dive Deep video podcast where we debate a bunch of popular sports topics. On today's episode, we'll start off with I'm Patrick,
I'm Will.
And on this episode today, we'll be discussing the problem and the issue around paying NCAA athletes. And Will will give us a little bit of background info on that.
So these athletes, besides scholarships, are given basically no money. And recently, in this year, with the NCAA basketball, there has been a lot of scandals that have surfaced about athletes getting paid through agents and coaches securing money for these athletes through agents or through big brands like Adidas. And the dynasty in Louisville, run by Rick Pitino, recently got taken down, basically, after it was found out that Adidas had been allocating money to a lot of athletes that had gone through Louisville. Arizona is involved in this. It's not clear whether or not Sean Miller did anything. But overall, we're debating, in light of the scandal, we're debating whether or not it's right for these athletes to get paid when the NCAA makes it cleared $1 billion in 2017, and all of these athletes get is scholarship money.
Yeah, so what do you think? Do you think college athletes should be paid, or do you think they shouldn't? Or should we keep it the same way it is right now?
Personally, I think they should be paid, but I will play the devil's advocate in this situation, and I'll debate the other side.
I do think they should be paid. I definitely think they should be paid, and I'm going to argue for this side. Have a bunch of arguments listed here. But to start off with, one of the main arguments I have, and one of the most things I find absurd, is the amount of money that college coaches receive. And the players don't get compensated at all, other than scholarship money, obviously. But according to USA Today, there are 66 coaches getting paid more than $1 million a year, 47 coaches being paid more than $2 million a year, and 14 million coaches getting paid $3 million or more a year. And in my opinion, obviously in sports, coaching is very important, but the players are the ones impressing the fans. They're the ones playing out there. I think they should be definitely getting paid for the work they do on the field. What do you think about this argument?
The thing is about the coaches getting paid more absurd amounts of money is that the coaches are employees of the university. Well, the athletes are students of the university. They come to the university to do school and to play sports. You can debate whether or not they come to do one more than the other, but when it comes down to it, they are listed as students more than they are listed. They're not listed at all as employees. Even though they receive compensation and scholarships, unlike coaches who are employees, and the coaching field is competitive and across the nation, schools want the best coaches. They're willing to pay more if they have more money to allocate to coaching. So I think that when it comes down to it, coaches are completely separate from athletes and the way they should get paid and the way they are paid. And if you look later on in the NBA, coaches get paid even less than athletes that way. So I mean, it's just all about how much money the university has to pay that coach.
I do understand the point that they are athletes. They're not just they're students. I mean, they're student athletes. They're students, and coaches are not students. They're hired employees of the school.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, in a lot of schools, especially like Louisville, the players that the school has are worth a lot more than they're being paid and than they're being compensated. So, for example, players at certain schools might be making the school $250,000, $300 per player each year, and not be getting compensated close to that amount of money. And I do understand that they're still students, but they do a lot more than any other student does. A normal student just goes to class, does his schoolwork. Student athletes, on the other hand, perform every day, train every day, racking a lot of money for the school through ticket sales, through their popularity. So I definitely think that student athletes should be paid should be given certain scholarships, but should still be compensated apart from that and get paid for their athletic abilities and their athletic performance.
First thing about this point is that the school is not the one that's doing it. In my eyes, not the one that's trying not to pay the athletes. So the NCAA, it's an NCAA rule that the athletes can't get paid. Yeah. They have to maintain their amateur status. But with the schools are finding ways to try and pay the athletes through these agents. The coaches are, but on the point, athletes are compensated in some way. They have priority registration. They get scholarships, as I said before. They have tons of meal points and things like that, even as ridiculous as that is. They get better housing than the rest of the students. They are compensated in some way. Like the athletes, like the basketball players, their freshman year, I'm pretty sure all live in Briscoe, right next to the stadium, so it's a much easier walk to get to the stadium, get their practice. Even though their workload is harder, they're agreeing to do this at a certain level in order to be able to go into the NBA and develop more. I mean, this brings up a whole another set of issues. That's bad grammar, but like if athletes, like this is the only kind of thing in place right now in order to get to the next level. It's the best way to develop as an athlete is to take this next step after high school. And so, I mean, I don't really want to get into this whether or not they have a choice to do this, but at a certain point, like this is the option they have, and they are getting compensated in some way.
Yeah, so I agree with you partially on the argument that player athletes that are trying to make it pro, they're being already compensated enough. When they go to the pros, they're going to be getting paid a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But the fact is that most college players, most college D1 athletes don't make it pro. A lot of college athletes simply choose to play college sports, D1 sports, D2 sports, whatever it may be, simply just because they wouldn't be allowed into any other school otherwise, and it's just a way for them to earn a scholarship and an education. And a lot of these athletes come from impoverished backgrounds, from bad neighborhoods and bad cities. And since most of these athletes will not be going pro, I believe that while at college, since they're going to these schools to play sports and to study, and them playing sports takes away from their learning time, takes away from anything else. I think they should be compensated for that time that they're spent not in class, and basically earning money for the school, even though they might not make it pro and might not have a professional athletic career after they graduate.
See, I think that's more on the athlete though, because the athlete has to realize at a certain point, like, I am here, I may not make it pro, I probably won't make it pro, and so I need to focus on getting a degree and setting myself up for life after sports. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't know if that's as much up to the university. The university's giving them all the tools they need to accomplish that degree and like to get to that next level where they can get a professional career outside of sports. And I don't know if that's as much like the university's doing all they can. And I think we need to debate more whether or not the NCAA is just in doing this when the NCAA is making all this money instead of the university, because the university really, they do a lot for the students, and it's just part of being a student athlete is having to balance that time and deciding whether or not it's worth it to be an athlete and to get these grades.
Yeah, I agree with you that most schools have the athletes in their best interest, have the best interest in mind for their athletes. And the NCAA, this is why the arguments I'm making, the NCAA just gets in the way of that, and is trying to make money off these college athletes and forcing schools to compensate them a lot less than I think they should be compensated.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've talked a lot about the specific benefits. Well, I've talked about the specific benefits from the athlete's perspective of getting paid, and you talked about why the athletes shouldn't be compensated outside of their scholarships. But let's say the NCAA would allow schools to compensate their athletes through normal salaries. Mm-hmm. I think that would also benefit a lot of the schools, not just the athletes personally, but it would benefit the schools at large because it would incentivize most athletes to stay a lot longer instead of just declaring for the draft or quitting after a year or two.
Yeah.
They would be incentivized to stay and play for the team, which would obviously help the school out a lot. So I think that changing the rules would not only help the athletes, but it would help the schools as well.
Yeah, see, but the rules are NBA rules or they're NFL rules. Like the NBA has this one and done rule in place. The NCAA benefits from it, but it's not their rule. And same with the NFL. The NFL rule, I think, is 3 years outside of high school. The NBA is 1 year outside of high school. They don't say you have to go to college, but going to college or playing Europe like the ball kids did, like college seems to be the best option because it already has this infrastructure in place for development. And so, I mean, reworking the rule would be really hard. The NBA just announced they're trying to do it by 2020 to get rid of the one and done rule and allow kids to go from high school again.
Yeah.
But like, what's in place right now with the NCAA, it's just like a behemoth that just creates cash. It cleared $1 billion last year, in revenue. And like, even though a lot of this is from the students, like the students getting compensated, but they cannot do it without the NCAA. And what the NCAA has in place, they can't really get to that next level, arguably, without what the NCAA has in place right now.
Okay, so I basically, so you touched on a little bit on how the NBA is currently trying to make a new rule to allow high school athletes to go straight to college, which I totally agree with. MLB does this. And obviously for very talented athletes who don't want to go through the whole journey of college and risking injuries, even in their college career, could go straight to the NBA and get paid for it. And I feel like throughout this conversation, we've kind of come to the same conclusion that it's not the schools or the athletes that are hurt by this or not hurt by this. It's kind of an NCAA issue.
Yeah.
It's an organization that controls all colleges and all college sports. And from this, like I obviously see an evident problem with the NCAA, and it's the way it just forces its influence on schools, and the way it's trying to make money. Like no other country does this, and like obviously no other country has popular college sports and the college college cultural movement like this. But there's no organization that controls athletes and schools the way the NCAA does. And I personally think it's just a very corrupt system. It allows for even other ways of corruption because these college athletes are taken advantage of, eventually taken advantage of by agents. And even certain college athletes, when they get a scholarship and get hurt in their freshman year, end up being dropped in their freshman year, having to drop out of college. So I guess we could come to the conclusion that that the NCAA sucks, and that it's just corrupt. It's a money machine. Do you agree?
I mean, yeah. For the sake of the argument, I would like to say no, but when I look at this, I can only really see it from one way. That's that the NCAA has all this power. They have a lot of control, and there's no real other option right now other than going through the NCAA. For these athletes.
Yeah, so I think that's it for the first episode. Make sure to check out our YouTube channel and our website. Subscribe, like the video, and we'll see you next time.